Hello and welcome to Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway. Great to be with you. My name is Eric. I am the founder of Sustainable Brand Index and also the company behind it, SB Insight. I'm going to guide you through the following 40-45 minutes of insights about sustainability in the Norwegian market. Happy to be with you. Generally quite happy today. I mean, we've all seen the skiing, I suppose. So, it's a good day. And, but of course, we're not going to focus on Sweden today. Very important to emphasize. Norway focus today. You do deserve some attention as well. Jokes aside, we're going to talk about the state of sustainability in Norway, what's happened over the past year, the development. We're going to look at the consumer behavior groups that we follow over time to see how that has developed or how those have developed. We are also going to look at sustainability communication, greenwashing, something that is, of course, extremely relevant. And then we're going to end up in the ranking and releasing the ranking for Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway. I also want to emphasize that this is actually the 15th year of performing Sustainable Brand Index. Very happy about that. We started out back in 2011 in Sweden, and then we entered Norway 2 years later. So a long time, and of course today I'm going to reflect a bit on the long-term perspective to see what has happened, what has changed within sustainability related to consumers and related to brands and communication over these past 15 years. All right, come along for the ride. Let's go Norway 2025. Before we get into the details and all of the insights, I do have to mention a bit about how we performed the study and, of course, the history of the study, having done it for such a long time. I'm actually personally, a very big fan of recycling. So what I'm going to do today is actually recycle myself from last year, because I did such a great speech about the how and the what of the Sustainable Brand Index. So let's recycle that and save the energy. We have been doing this for a long time now. We started out in Sweden back in 2011. Then 2 years later, we went into the Norwegian market, the Danish market, and the Finnish market. In 2017, we expanded into the Netherlands as well. And then since 2020, we're also in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So all in all, 8 markets today. Sustainable Brand Index is today Europe's largest independent brand study on sustainability. We're very proud of that. And every year, we interview more than 80,000 respondents about how they perceive more than 1,600 brands in these markets. So, how do we do it? How do we perform Sustainable Brand Index? That's a very good question. Let me walk you through the 4 stages of it. Number 1, desk research. We put a massive amount of time every year into looking around us, basically. What is happening in the market? What are key developments that we see? Economy, politics, social trends, etc. And of course, what are the sustainability topics that we see emerging among consumers and in society in general? So this is a lot of work just looking around us and gathering that. And this is super important input that goes into the web surveys that we perform in the later stages. Stage number 2, Web survey number 1. This is where we take all the insights and the results from the desk research stage and we put into a web survey where we want to interview consumers. We work with Norstat as our main supplier of consumer respondents. We access their panels and we ask our questions basically. And web survey number 1 is very much about two things. It's brand assessments, what do people think about the brands from a sustainability perspective, and also some overarching consumer indicators regarding sustainability attitudes and sustainability behaviors. Stage number 3, web survey number 2. Having done web survey number 1, we collect the data, we look at it, we analyze it, and we see, maybe there are things here we want to examine further. If so, we put that into web survey number 2. On top of that, we also look at the in-depth perspective for each brand. So we analyze, or rather we interview consumers about between 25 to 30 different areas for the brand. What are the key drivers behind the perception of the specific brand when it comes to sustainability? Stage number 4, last but not least, turning data into insights. This is really the most important part, according to me. This is where we take the data from Web Survey 1 and Web Survey 2 and of course combine it with 14 years of having performed Sustainable Brand Index. So the amount of data is vast and now we have to make sense of it. And this is what we do. And one part of that is really generating insights that we're going to share today in this webinar. And the other part is really tailored insights relevant for the brands on the list that we provide to them. Thank you so much, myself, 2024. 15 years, important to emphasize. I did a good job, I think. Bit pale, but otherwise very good. I hope you got a good grip on how we perform Sustainable Brand Index. Now let's dig into the key insights 2025. This first one, this is a KPI, I could call it, that we have been following since the very beginning of Sustainable Brand Index in all the countries. It's the interest in sustainability, or rather the conversation. So what we measure here is the share of the population, Norwegians in this case, that discuss sustainability with friends, family, and so on, either sometimes or often, so on a fairly regular basis, I would say. And what's specifically interesting here is really the development over time. I always emphasize the long-term development, which I think is really the key to look at. So if you look at the long term here, we could see, if you look at 2013 to 2020 as an example here, and I've also marked it in orange just to be very, very clear, you can see that, sustainability, the trajectory is definitely, it has been positive. It has been going up over time, which is important to mention. But it was much more volatile back then. The fluctuation was quite strong, as you can see here. So it went up when something happened that was, triggering discussions about sustainability. For example, the Paris climate meeting in December 2015 really spiked the numbers for 16 here. Then we had Donald DJ coming in as president for his first term in beginning of 2017, and as you can see, there was a bit of a less discussions of sustainability. Then we had a huge focus on activism that you probably remember, Greta and others as well, really pushing up the discussions again. And then the pandemic came along and taking it down a bit. So it was really affected by what's happening around us in the world, the big macro perspective. And what is interesting now, and this is so positive, I think, for us and for everyone working with sustainability and people in general, is that sustainability is now integrated into consumer awareness. And it's there. It's the new normal, we say. Because as you can see over the past 5 years, if you look from 21 to 2025, you can see that the fluctuation is more or less non-existent. So really, it hasn't been a lack of uh, macro events. I think we can all agree on that. I mean, we've had the Ukraine war breaking out and still super relevant, of course. We've had a tougher economy since a few years back. And of course, now we have Donald Trump kickstarting his second term as president again. So there's been a lot of things happening, but the interest and the conversations around sustainability are very stable. And this is really a clear sign of sustainability being a new normal, stable, integrated. And I think we should be very happy about that. So, what do people talk about in sustainability? That is obviously an interesting follow up question. And we have it here. We can look at it together. You can see it to the right here. And basically, the main topic is quite obviously war and conflicts. That's the same in all the countries. And, the reasons are obvious. So, 63%, high number, obviously. Um, I also want to emphasize some other aspects. Actually, climate change, 45%, very high. It's really been climbing in Norway over the past few years, so that is very positive. Climate change focus. We do see other environmentally related aspects like circular economy, air and water pollution, energy efficiency being also very important. One thing that actually or rather deviates a bit in Norway compared to the other countries is the domestic economy. That is, more people talking about that in Norway than in Sweden and Denmark and Finland. So that's one thing to just point out. But otherwise, I think fairly logical. I've also coded the colors here a bit, so you can see the blue ones are a bit more societal or even maybe governance, if I may call them so. The green ones, climate and environmentally related, and then we have the orange ones, which are a bit more on the macro and maybe even the political perspective. So important things such as democracy as well there, as you can see. Okay, it's time for maybe my favorite part, the consumer behavior groups. And many of you maybe have followed us over the years, hopefully. You know them since before. We have these four groups that we actually base on behavior rather than attitude, because as I always emphasize, what we say that we do and what we actually do are two vastly different things, not even in the same room or maybe even universe. So big distinction there. And what we've done here, very briefly, and I'm not going to get into the details in this webinar, but you can of course read about it, and you can also contact us. But basically, this is based on an observational study in the very beginning, so looking at how people behave in a retail environment. And after that, we found the traits of four major segments, and then we follow them over time, basically. So we don't go around asking people, "Excuse me, are you ego?" or "Excuse me, are you smart?" because we wouldn't get the data quality would not be very good, basically. So let me walk you through them quickly. Ego, as you might guess from the name, this is a consumer that focuses, what's in it for me, 100% more or less. So it's a lot of focus on price, a lot of focus on function and things that really matter to me and close to me. They're not very into sustainability, especially not the terms and the phrasing around it. So they're kind of allergic to sustainability or climate change or those kind of words. But they do care about some aspects of it, not for the sustainability reason, but rather they're very into, a living countryside, local production, working conditions in Norway, etc. So they're very locally and nationally focused, as you might guess. And that's, of course, one aspect of sustainability as well. Then we have the moderate group, the big one, as you might guess from the name, the moderate group. I would say key trait for this group, I mean, it's a big group, you will see that soon, but key trait for this group is that they're not going to drive the change themselves. They start changing their behaviors when others do, basically. So when others start, doing things and maybe progressing, then they kind of start testing that as well. So it's a very important group to, try to catch on in sustainable behaviors. The smart group, now we're getting into the progressive ones. The smart group, again, you might guess it from the name, but this is really the group that can balance what's in it for them and what's in it for the world. So they know that, I can make a decision. I can buy a product, for example, that is good for me, qualitatively, service wise, whatever it might be, health wise. But also for the world, or at least less bad for the world. So they are also very into climate as a sustainability topic. That's one of their key focuses that has also increased over the past few years. And then we have the dedicated group, last and least, because it's the smallest one. I mean, this is really the well-read, very well-informed, very researching a lot, looking up companies, talking a lot to others, really spreading their opinions on social media, for example, about these topics. So, I mean, this is a group that is maybe not a big customer potential, to be honest, but definitely a group you really want to be friends with and keep on your side and have them actually maybe promote what you're doing. So, looking at the ego group, you can see that we're back where we started basically. So 38% back in 2013, and now we're there again. And I mean, there has been, of course, ups and downs along the road. As you can see, we had the biggest drop, I would say, or rather the low point here in 2022, as you can see. But then we've had a bit of an increase over the past few years. And I mean, the reason for this is that the economy has been tougher. It is tougher, which means that sustainable behaviors become, harder for people, basically. This is the case in all the Nordic countries, so don't worry about the Norwegians being special in that case. The one thing that actually does deviate a bit is the size, because 38% is fair amount bigger than in the other countries. They are all around 30% something. So that is one thing. But I mean, basically, this group is a big one. It's going to be there. It's really about how do we adapt and work with them, not expect them to actually disappear. And again, economy is very important. Macro perspective, of course, they're focusing a lot on the international politics, etc., and what's going on there. So it's a challenging group. Moderate group, fairly stable as well, as you might see. And I mean, that's something that I'm going to return to because, since we looked at ego and moderate and they're stable, you might guess the rest as well. So the long-term trend here, I mean, going from 43 back in 2013 to 40. So it's still the biggest single group, even though ego is very big as well. So big group, very important to try to catch and hope that they can follow, actually. But these are, of course, this is the kind of the transit group. So when smart consumers maybe drop out of the smart because they don't have the money to make sustainable choices, they end up here. And same for the moderates, they move back to ego, so to speak. So it's not necessarily about the values. And I think that's super important to emphasize that, I don't care about sustainability anymore. It's more that, I don't have the ability to maybe exercise that I care for sustainability. And the smart group, ups and downs here over time. As you can see, we started out at 15% and now we're at 70%. So I mean, long-term trend still slightly positive. It is a fairly big group still, I would say. But it's gone down. I mean, since 2022, where we had a kind of a high level, 23% in Norway, and now it's down to 17, increasing 1 point this year, but basically neutral development over the past 3 years. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that this is not about the group, I don't care about sustainability anymore. But we do know, I mean, if you put the economy side by side to this graph, you will probably see that that'll give you a lot of insight, because they want to be sustainable, but they don't necessarily have the means to do it, basically. And the same goes for the dedicated group. I mean, this is really the group that is, I mean, as I said, they are hardcore sustainable. That's what they focus on. That's what they're into. And they do have, I mean, demographically, we can just say quickly that there is and has been an overrepresentation of students and also older ladies, and these tend to have slightly less money. And of course, given the economy over the past few years, that's the key reason why this group is now down to 5% from 13% just a few years back. Not because suddenly they don't care, but definitely because the economy is not allowing them to maybe exercise this caring, so to speak. So that's very important to emphasize. Values are there, but the ability is not there. And of course, this is something that you as brands, as companies, need to be able to handle and actually focus on. And how do we provide these services? Because I'm going to get back to this over the seminar here or the webinar here, that this is, behaviors are quite constant. Yeah, they might go up and down over time a bit, but as you've seen here now, we're back to where we started basically. And people are who they are, and they behave how they behave. So it's very much about how do we, or you rather, adapt to that, rather than sit around waiting like, okay, when are they going to come shouting for all the sustainable products that we want to offer them, so to speak. Bit of a summary, as you can see. I'm not going to dive too deep here, but you see the development, and you also see that in 2022, actually, the Ego and the Smart Group, they were really close. So that was really the year when the gap was almost closed between those two. But then we've seen the spread again, so Ego going up and Smart going down, which is, of course, a shame in many ways. But again, we've talked about the reasons, and about how you need to adapt to that and really focus on it from another perspective, and not expect people to be able to always behave in a certain way or be willing, but maybe they need your help, they need your encouragement, and they need your advice, I would say. Speaking about advice, I mean, of course, one thing is saying, hey, these are the consumer groups, this is how they behave, and what they do and don't do. So let's have a bit of a look at how would you communicate with them, because that's, I think, the key thing here. Like, how do we talk about sustainability with these four groups? So starting from the top, you have Ego, obviously, then moderate, then smart, then dedicated. And let's assume here, this is of course fictional, but a fictional case where we want to sell an energy product, an energy saving product of some sort, to the consumers. And if you look at the first one, the Ego, how do we frame it for the Ego consumer? Well, cuts your electricity costs while keeping performance high. I mean, that's really the key focus for them: the function, the price. That's what I said before. So you don't even mention sustainability basically, because it's not an interesting aspect for them in this case. They're not into that. They want to know, okay, price is lower, and performance is higher. I like that. That's a good combination for me. The smart one, the moderate one, it just starts by smart, but smart choices that keep your bills low without compromising comfort. Yeah, so here we have similar to the Ego one, actually, smart choices, keeping your bills low. Still, the key thing here is price, but without compromising comfort. So they're a bit more into these soft values, the moderate group. So, comfort, family, warmer sentiment, so to speak. So you can put a bit of that in there as well. Now, if we go into smart, then we have a bit more of a balance between the functionality and sustainability. So cutting waste means cutting costs, better for your wallets and for the world. So basically, again, a balance there. You have the world and you have the wallet, but you can't take away the wallet, because then you lose them. So still, the balance is key there. And then dedicated, efficiency isn't just about saving energy, it's about doing things right. So bit more of an idealistic, or maybe altruistic, maybe communication type there. So really focusing on the sustainability aspects and value aspect, and doing the right things there with the dedicated consumer. So this is just a very brief example of how you should think when it comes to these four behavior groups, and how to reach them and how to impact them. Sustainability communication, quite natural after talking about the consumer groups and how to talk to them. So moving into this one, we're going to talk a bit more general, not about the groups, but how people see sustainability communication, and how they perceive it basically. So first out, as you can see here, we have the attitude. So basically what we're looking at here, or what we're asking here, is how people perceive the fact that companies talk about sustainability and communicate about it. This is something that people perceive as positive or negative. Do they like it? And as you can see, this is actually the clearest trend that we have in the Nordics, the positive one. So going from 2022 up to today, from 46% to 50 to 57, and this year to 61. So steady, but still clear increase of the positives, people saying, yes, I do think it's good that companies talk about sustainability. And you can also see that the negative has gone down logically, but also interesting to note that it's definitely was a quarter a few years back, and now it's actually only 18%. So this is very positive, I would say, from a sustainability communication perspective. So why are people positive? That's of course the obvious follow-up question, and there are some things that just deviate or rather stand out when we ask them. Sustainability is about the future, so companies must work with it, and of course communicating about it is an important part of that. A lot of people also say, I want to know what companies do to help me shop sustainably, to choose the right brands or avoid others maybe. It can inspire positive change, and I think personally, I think this is probably the key one with communication, that it can create inspiration. It's a kind of a circularity there. The more we talk about it, the more people will understand and learn, and hopefully also act sustainably. So that is, I think, from my perspective, super important to emphasize. And then last but not least, just good to know. I think it's good to know that companies work on sustainability. Not that it necessarily affects me, but I think it's important to know it. Looking at this next one, the trust though, because attitude is high, positive attitude is high, super good, people want it. What do they think about it? Well, as you can see here we have the big challenge still, and it is increasing a bit uh, since last year. But basically, this is the trust and the mistrust. So people saying, okay, when we ask them, what we do here is we ask them, think about sustainability communication that you see and experience today. Do you trust it or do you mistrust it in general? What's your instinct? And as you can see here, we it's very clear that most people say that, or not most people, but a very big chunk of the Norwegians, 37%, going up a bit since last year, say that I instinctively mistrust what brands and companies say about sustainability. So this is not a good thing, because this is also a complicated gap: high attitude, positive attitude, low trust, or rather high mistrust. And the positive ones, or rather the trusting ones, 21%. So not that many either. So this is definitely a big challenge. There is an interest in it, but people don't trust what they see. So let's dive into that, the trust issue, I would say. Here we have it basically. So what do they say as the key drivers for the mistrust? Well, many people say that sustainability communication is mostly marketing, not real action. It's greenwashing, basically, 68%. So that's really the high one. uh, Companies talk about sustainability to stay politically correct. You can see that as well. Profit over sustainability. It doesn't feel, sincere. Communication feels fake. So I would say all these top three ones here, the big ones or the high ones, these are more or less about the same thing. And that's really authenticity. And I think that's really something that in branding in general is something that we talk about a lot these days, and that is lacking. So people, they don't believe that the communication, the activation around sustainability is coming from the right place, basically. That's the key thing here. That's, of course, a tough one, because that's not always the case either, that it does come from the right place. So but you can also communicate about sustainability because you believe in the business opportunity, and that's hopefully a very, very important and big part of it. But here we see that people really, they want it to be authentic, and the reasons for doing it should be the right reason. So this is a tough balance, I would say. And then you can see we continue a bit: hard to trust, difficult to verify, lots of promises, little evidence. And I think these two things, I would say, summarizing there, is transparency. People don't feel that they can verify what brands are doing or not doing, so to speak. So yeah, all in all, I would say, again, authenticity, lack of authenticity. Why are you doing this? But then also transparency, lack of transparency, not being able to verify, and actually, you know controlling that brands are actually doing what they say that to do. And I think this is super interesting if you add the upcoming regulations from EU, the Green Claims Directive, because verifying your sustainability or your environmental claims is going to be huge, or is the big part of that. So hopefully that can actually help in many ways when it comes to consumers' worry or mistrust reasons as well. What do they want to see? Well, that's a good one. Obviously, that's interesting as a next step to see what do they prefer then. Well, one thing that is super clear, and that's not only in Norway, but this is of course Norway, but it's to give you some context, in the other countries as well, we see that, most people, or many people, not most, but many people, as you can see, and the largest single argument here is really that people sustainability should relate to the product that I'm actually looking at. If I'm going to buy something, I don't want to hear about the fantastic company behind it, the corporation, the corporate communication, but rather about the specific product that I'm holding in my hand, or service, obviously. So that is, I think, an interesting takeaway as well, because we do tend to focus a lot on, emphasizing how good a company we are, and putting us, or putting the company in the center, rather than maybe the product in this case, and of course the consumer. I prefer to look things up myself. I think that's also very interesting. 26%, a fairly big chunk there, saying that, don't push it on me. I prefer to look it up myself. So of course, catering to that is super important, to be able to actually say, hey, we have all the information here. Once you want it, once you're ready, go get it, go look at it, and ask us if you have any questions, basically. Some also, of course, others, they appreciate the in-depth sustainability info. So here we have a bit of, variation, because some also say I prefer only basic info. So it is definitely challenge to keep it, to please all of them. Yes, and you can see for yourself the rest here. But I think the key thing here is to think a bit about the fact that, the product maybe should be more in focus, the product or the service, but also that there are many people that, it suffices that you actually have the information, then they can look at it themselves when they want to. Last but not least, the one thing that consumers do prefer, if they get to choose, like what type of communication, what do you trust, what is really the key thing for you to be able to trust communication about sustainability? And then here you have it. It's third-party labels, or certifications. That's really what people want to see. That's what they trust. So it's super clear in Norway, as well as the other countries, that this is really the way to go in the eyes of consumers. And again, this is interesting to connect to the upcoming Green Claims Directive from the EU, because this is, of course, another super big part, or the other big part, I would say, of the directive, that they want to clean up a bit among the third-party labels that are in the EU, because there's so many, and many of them are not good enough, basically. So hopefully we can land in a landscape of third-party labels and certifications that people trust, and that are strong, and good labels, basically, that people can use in their pursuit of sustainable products. Finally, we're here. The ranking in Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway. And of course, before we get into that, I'm going to hold you, stretch it a bit more, basically, but I'm going to again exercise my passion for recycling, and ask myself from 2024 to explain a bit about the Sustainable Brand Index ranking. How does it work? The Sustainable Brand Index ranking score consists of two major areas. We call them environmental responsibility and social responsibility. So these are the key aspects of the ranking score. The definition that we use are the 17 global goals for sustainable development. So for environmental responsibility, we take the environmentally related goals, and that's what we use as a definition when we ask consumers. And same for social responsibility, we take the socially related goals and put them in the definition as for social responsibility. Fantastic. Thank you so much, myself. Good to know. Just a quick question though, like just to visualize it a bit, or just explain it a bit more, like how would a perfect brand score where everyone is, positive to it? If you're a perfect brand, which means that everyone thinks you're sustainable, you would get 100% within environmental responsibility and another 100% within social responsibility. We take these percentages and we put those on top of each other. So again, a perfect brand, there is no such thing, I know, but a perfect brand would get 200%. That's the maximum score. So the score goes from 0 to 200. And this score then corresponds to a certain rank in the list that you get. All right, I think I got it. Well, I got it, but I think hopefully all of you listening and watching get it too. Let's get into it. Let's start out with looking at the average ranking score for Sustainable Brand Index in Norway over time, because that gives us a good indication of the general state of sustainability perception. And here it is. So, looking at the long term again, I like that. It's interesting, especially if you look from 2013 to 2022. You can see that, wow, what a positive development. And I used to call between 2017 and 2021, 22. I always said, like, this is the Norwegian honeymoon. People, consumers are just very positive to brands because they don't really know anything. They just, they're happily surprised that brands and companies are taking responsibility. And I think in some ways I was right, because in 22 to 23, you can see there was a steep decline. We had many Norwegians, many consumers, specifically younger consumers or younger parts of the population, so between 16 to 44 approximately, going from having a lot of opinions to actually saying, I don't know, or actually saying, the companies are not doing enough, because there was kind of a despair, and it has been since, but a despair in what politicians were doing, in what companies were doing. No one was doing enough, and there was also big despair in how much can I affect this. So this was really a year of despair, 2023, actually, for the Norwegian population. And as you can see, we haven't really recovered from that at all. We're actually still at the low level. It's neutral this year, though. So this year is kind of same as last year. 35% is the average score, which is good to see that it's stabilized there. But of course, there's a long way to go to this, fairly positive average perception of brands and companies when it comes to sustainability. So we're on a low level. Same for Sweden, same for Denmark. Good for you to know. So it's more or less the same level in those countries, and we have seen this very negative development as well. And other reasons for that also is, in general, that people are confused. They don't understand sustainability. What is it? What is it? What is it not? Who is sustainable? Who isn't? And of course, there's been less communication also over the past 2 years, I would say. Less corporate communication and communication in general about sustainability. And memory is short. Let's start by looking at the top 30 climbers in Norway between 24 and 25. So basically the 30 brands that have climbed the most positions in the ranking since last year. Here you have them. It's a bit of a mix. We can see a hotel chain, Park Inn by Radisson, 93 spots. That's great. That's very, very strong. 93 spots out of almost 300 brands. So that is, that's fantastic. Net on Net also doing well. Color Line, Finnsbråten, Burger King, Hafslund. Bit of a mix, I would say. We have energy companies, we have food, we have electronic retailers, we have hotels, airlines. You can see KLM as well. You can see Nordea. So we have the finance industry represented as well. So kind of a mix of the brands that have increased the most since last year. So hat off to these brands. Well done in climbing the most in Sustainable Brand Index since last year. All right, let's get into the winners. Let's have a look at the winners in Sustainable Brand Index 2025, starting with the industry winners. So here we have the brands that win their each respective industry 2025. Congratulations, first of all, to all of them, all of you. We do have a lot of same ones since last year, as you can see, but we also have a few new ones. You can probably read for yourself, but I do want to point out the new ones. So we have Toyota taking over the lead in automotive car industry, basically. Very interesting. Well done. We also have in clothes and fashion stores, we have Sport1 doing well and taking that lead, actually. Then we have in electricity and heating, we have Fjordkraft taking the lead. Again, was a few years back, if I remember correctly, but now back on top. We have also Flytoget in passenger transport, retaking the lead there in the industry. So we have few new ones, as you could see, and then we have a lot of the same ones. But all in all, congratulations. These are brands that the Norwegian consumers perceive as the most sustainable brands in Norway 2025. So great job. Okay, here we go. Let's have a look at the top 10 All winners. It's not like skiing, but still, this is the top 10 in Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway. Let's make a nice countdown. At number 10 this year, we find V. Passenger transport V coming in at number 10. Well done to remain. Slight drop since last year, but still a strong position in the top 10. At number 9, we have IKEA. So Swedish brand, but still very loved by Norwegians, as you all know. So strong position, always in the top 10, and so this year. So number 9, IKEA in Sustainable Brand Index 2025. Number 8, we have Rörosmejeriet. Also a strong contender, almost, I think, always in the top 10 since we added them to the ranking a few years back. So congratulations on a well-deserved 8th place this year. At number 7, we find Vinmonopolet climbing yet another year. So they had a great year last year, climbing a lot, and this year climbing another few positions. So number 7 this year, Vinmonopolet. Very, very strong position, and again, a very positive trend over the past few years for them. At number 6, we find another dairy. We've had Tine coming in at number 6, also always doing great in Sustainable Brand Index this year. Number 6, so well done for Tine as well. At number 5, we find Flytåget. So V was number 10 and now number 5, Flytåget. So that's the industry winner, as you probably saw before, in passenger transport, and also coming in at number 5 in the overall ranking. Of course, an extremely strong position. So good job by Flytåget, the airport express. At number 4, added to the list, another dairy brand. We have Q-mejerierna coming in. So among the very, very strong dairies that we have in the top 10, we have Rörosmejeriet, we have Tine, and now we have Q, which is then the category leader, so to speak, in this case. So congratulations to Q. And we're entering the podium. Yes, you're all very aware of what that means. So top 3, and number 3 this year, actually same as last year. We have Posten. Great, well done by Posten, coming in at number 3, keeping that strong position, same as last year. And at number 2, let's see what we have. Now we're getting very close, and we have Finn.no, coming in at number 2. This means, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a new winner this year, because Finn has actually won the past 3 years in Sustainable Brand Index Norway. But 2025, we will find a new winner in Sustainable Brand Index. Very exciting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Number 1. I know you're all sitting around thinking, who is it? What happened? Finn is not number 1 anymore. How can this be? Are there any brands that we have forgotten? Some of you may have made the math. You probably looked at the industry winners and might remember. But hey, here it is. Number 1 in Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway is Änglamark. Congratulations, Änglamark. Of course, under the umbrella of Coop, Änglamark performing so well, coming in as number 1 in Sustainable Brand Index 2025 Norway. Congratulations. Again, congratulations, Änglamark. Well done. You're in good company. For those of you who watched the Danish webinar yesterday, you know that Änglamark also won the Danish Sustainable Brand Index 2025. So super strong sustainable brand in the eyes of the consumers. Congratulations. Now I'm going to actually start wrapping up, summarizing a bit, and hopefully you got a lot of good insights throughout this webinar. But I also want to summarize and emphasize a few things before I leave you. First of all, maybe the most important thing is that sustainability is the new normal. We're very happy to be there. As you remember, the fluctuation in the interest is not at all the same as it used to be. It's very stable, it's integrated, people expect it. Of course, there's still many challenges. Doesn't mean that people run around being sustainable all the time. That's not what I'm saying, but it is an integrated expectation in the majority of the population. So we should be very happy about that. Second one is, of course, connected to that, and people not running around acting sustainably always, and looking at the behavior groups really having, the same sizes as when we started looking at them in 2013. Don't sit around waiting for sustainable behaviors, because you need to adapt. That's not going to happen. People are short-sighted. They're very occupied by other things. They have, lives. They have occupation. They have a job. They have family. They have hobbies, etc. So they're not gonna all of a sudden wake up and say, "Oh, I'm really craving this sustainable product from a certain company." You have to push it on them, and you have to be smart about how to do it. And one of the things that I'm always emphasizing, and still this year, is really be clear about the value. That's something that I also want to emphasize, because the value is the important one. As you remember, when I briefly went through how do we talk to different kind of consumer groups, well, when it comes to 95% of the population, you have to emphasize the value for them primarily, not the fact that it's good for your company or for the world or for other people and so on, but for them. Why is it a value for them? And then I also want to share a bit of nugget of insight from the internal perspective, because as I said in the beginning, this is the 15th year of Sustainable Brand Index. A lot of things have happened. We've talked a bit about some of them. One thing I want to share from the inside is that when I started Sustainable Brand Index back in 2011 in Sweden and reached out to companies asking if they were interested in what we were doing, so many of them said, why is this relevant? Why would we care about this? Why or should we be interested? And I can tell you, I can guarantee you, I never get that question these days. It's always, what can we do and how fast can we do it? So I think that is also a very, very important key change that we have seen over these past 15 years that I'm very happy about. So there is a lot of hope out there. And I think, and hopefully this webinar has given you some hope as well. If you're interested in learning more about your brand, we do provide these different types of reports, in-depth analysis for your brand, from the data report, a bit more shallow, a bit lighter, focusing on the data, to the analysis report and the strategy report, where we go in depth and provide you with clear, actionable recommendations on how to proceed with building your sustainable brand, communicating sustainability, etc. We also have the perception versus performance report, which is basically where we compare your perception in specific sustainability areas with how you're actually doing based on the reporting that you publish. So that is a very interesting project that we do for companies as well. So bit of an advice there. All right, that's it, my friends. It's out. Go get it. The Sustainable Brand Index 2025 official report for Norway. You can see the link here. It's quite easy. So you go to sbinsight.com/SBI Norway, and there you just fill out the form, and then you can access the digital report this year. So what are you waiting for? Thank you so much for today. Have a great one.